This video is the first in a series of short videos that I'm going to make about management and leadership. So what we're going to be looking at primarily here is an introduction to the different concepts and look a little bit at the differences between management and leadership. So as I say, we're going to look at very briefly an overview. So this is really just an introduction. So across the various videos, I'm going to look at in quite a bit of detail, looking at different theories of the role of the manager. So what is it that manager actually does? And if we think about the terms manager, leader, sometimes it can be used quite interchangeably, but if you want to think about what a manager is, the manager is managing something, and it's usually processes or tasks. So they're focused on getting the job done effectively. So they're more concerned with making sure that tasks are carried out, projects are completed, those sorts of things. So getting the job done is really what a manager is focused on, whereas a leader should still have that focus on getting the job done, but how they go about doing that is very different, and the leader should be focused much more on getting the people to work with them. So some of the theories we're going to be looking at, we'll talk about task or a people orientation. So your manager is much more task focused and the leader is much more people focused. So they're more likely to think about how do they actually encourage the people to work with them to get the job done. So that's kind of where your ideas about charismatic leaders come from, or inspirational leaders where people will just follow them. So a leader is someone that can develop that kind of buy-in from other people, that they will actually work with the leader and will support them. So that's the two main differences. So you can be a manager and you just focus on getting the job done and you're perhaps not very good with people, but if you've also got leadership skills, it will make you more effective. But that's really the main differences between the two of them. So as I said, in the coming videos, I'm going to be talking about some different theories that look at what does a manager actually do, how do we define their focus when they're completing tasks, and it's going to look at things like how do they coordinate the different activities, how do they coordinate the different resources, how do they allocate the resources, how do they plan things out. So it's much more about planning and organising. And the key models that we tend to look at when we're looking at these things are FIOS, functions of management. There are 5 different elements within that. Mintzberg has the same kind of idea but breaks that down into 10 different roles rather than the 5. Drucker has a very similar approach. Rosemary Stewart's looking at something very different, but it's still much more about how do we actually complete the tasks and what are the factors that are impacting on us when we're actually trying to carry out our duties and complete the tasks that we're focused on. So these are all different theories that look at how we define what managers actually do. When we look at leadership, there's a history of the way the different leadership theories have evolved from thinking of leadership as something that we're born with. It's innate and it's just there and will always have those characteristics. So you're either born with leadership characteristics or you're not. And that's what the trait theories are. Functional theories are more about just focusing on getting the functions done. Behavioural theories look at how we behave. What do we actually do? What are the behaviours that we're demonstrating? But the difference between a trait theory and a behavioural theory is that with the behavioural theories, the thinking is that you can learn behaviours. You can learn to be a leader, so you can develop leadership training courses and send managers or potential managers on leadership training courses, and they will be better leaders. Looking at, as there's a lot of different types of leadership theory here, and I'm not really going to go through all of them, but most of them will be covered in the separate videos. But if we take something like situational or contingency leadership, again, that's the idea that How a leader behaves will depend on the people that they're leading. So someone who's very inexperienced, perhaps a little bit nervous, will need much more support, encouragement, guidance than someone who's been doing the job for a long time, is really confident, is really skilled, and you can really just give them a task and trust that they'll get on with it and they know what they're doing. And if they do have any problems or need anything, they'll come back and tell you. So situational is much more about you will adapt how you lead depending on the situation, depending on the needs of the people that you're leading, but perhaps also depending on the situation itself. So if something happens and it's a sudden crisis, then you perhaps don't have the time to be collaborative and involve your team. You might just have to make snap decisions and they will accept that and follow you. Transactional leadership is a leadership approach where you're very, very much focused on just getting the job done and you just operate step by step. Whereas transformational leadership is, generally speaking, the type of leadership that you would look for when you're managing a change process. You're not just transforming a process, you're changing everything within an organisation. So you need someone that can come in, that can be charismatic, can get people to buy into what's happening, why it's necessary, and they will be able to push the changes through because they will have quite a strong personality and they will be dynamic but keen to drive those changes. And the chances are that once the changes are embedded and things are operating, that leader's probably going to want to move on because they'll want the challenge of changing something else. Once the transformation's happened, their job's done. And then you might need a different type of leader to maintain stability. So there's lots and lots of different types of leadership. One of the more recent ones is the idea of authentic leadership, that the followers, the people that we're leading, look to their leaders to be genuine, to be transparent, to be not putting on airs and graces, not pretending to be something they're not. So they're looking for that authenticity in their leadership. So a lot of the individual short videos that I'm going to look at will be looking at these different approaches. So that is the presentation. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop me a message, and thank you for listening.